gold with no storage costs ever. Visit interestongold.com/David. That's interestongold.com/David.
Not ready to go to your favorite seafood restaurant? Get the highest quality fish for less delivered straight to your door by Fast Fresh Seafood. Order our fresh hot snapper, grouper, mahi, and more. They're boneless, skinless, flash frozen the same day, and individually vacuum wrapped. Pick the size filet you want, the amount you want, and checkout's easy at fastfreshseafood.com. The best thing, every fish is on sale. Fastfreshseafood.com. Caught fresh for you, delivered straight to you. Stay home and stay safe.
From the heart of Central Florida, you're listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. I'm your host, your neighbor, David Garnosky. So glad to be with you for our program today across the Sunshine State. We're soaring high on FM and AM. And around the world on our podcast or our audio live stream, which is available on aneighborschoice.com. Or you might be watching on our Facebook or YouTube if you've gone through the decoder ring you need to make it through the bots that try to censor our content because it's just too much truth. They just can't handle critiques of their stupid, outdated ideas that belong to the 15th, 14th century. These people, they have Luddite ideas, and we're just blazing through, just coming right through, and they can't keep up. No droid army can stop an idea whose time has come, and the time for the personhood revolution is here. That means we're going to solve energy without politics, without taking from some and giving to another. We're going to find energy too cheap to meter, pollution-free energy from the market, finding the new Teslas among us. We're going to find solutions for Alzheimer's, and cancer, diabetes, heart disease, all the different things that people think are impossible because they stick to politics to be their savior. Just not going to work for us anymore. We're going to find solutions to transportation, to housing, to all kinds of things on this program. And we do so because we reject toxic groupthink. We reject tribalism and the blame games that come with politics. Joining me now is a friend of the program. He comes on. You see him often on our Things Hidden podcast. He is someone that I consider to be a very, very unique student of history. Shannon Braswell. How you doing, Shannon?
I'm good, bro. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's great to have you on the radio show. Usually folks who follow both radio and podcasts, they may see you sometimes on our Things Hidden podcast. But I wanted to have you on air just to talk about some of the things related to the news cycle today, get your take on it. You're coming to us from the Seattle, Washington area. And, you know, we were talking before the program, you made an interesting comment that I wanted to elaborate, which is this idea that if we could just create more money, if we can create more checks, we create more programs or something, that somehow it'll make our communities thrive again, that'll make us flourish. But what you were telling me is that it's actually something more about personal efforts to save and to make money. That's really the key driver for our neighborhoods.
Yeah, we were, I was discussing with you in regards to, in particular, here in Seattle, where I live, and about generational wealth and talking about saving money and being, financially, knowledgeable, being able to know how to save your money, how to, create generational wealth, how not to, spend on frivolous things, things in that nature. And it seems to me that, I can't speak for, I can't speak for other states or other cities, but I know in particular my own, you see a lot of, people that who are living in the city. Most of them are coming from outside of the state. Most of the people that, are able to, live in inner cities, come with experience and skills that the city needs. And a lot of us here that, have been living here for generations don't have that. And so you see the loss in, stable housing comes along with the inability to be financially sound. So I think, that's a key factor in creating that longevity, as far as, being able to keep up with times, finances, the economy, is to know what it's about. And at least, for yourself and for your family, if not for your community.
Yeah, and you don't hear any politicians talk about saving, do you? It's all about trying to get you to spend your money in a different way, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's about, the idea that, putting money into the economy or spending your money is what helps to grow the economy. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that as far as, spending, but it's like, what are you spending it on, right? And that's I think the kind of the problem that we have. It's, you spend because you have it to spend, but then you're spending it on frivolous things, right? It's not using that money to invest in something that is, going to be a game changer or something like that. I'm going to spend money to buy this new, gadget or something like that instead of spending money on some kind of future, endeavor, that might help to change lives, or something like that. But, I don't fault people for doing that because that's how, our society thinks, right? And, you see other societies tend to not be that way. They tend to save their money, which, both have their drawbacks and their benefits. If you save money and never put it into the economy, then of course it's hoarding, and that doesn't lead to anything but you just having a lot of money. But of course, if you're able to think wisely about saving and spending, I think that's where it really counts. And I don't know, I tend to think that a lot of natives here in Seattle, we didn't really get around to figuring that out until it was kind of too late.
Mm-hmm. And that's what you're saying is that we have to foster a community of people, remembering that government and politicians are not going to solve your problems. If we focus on politics at the detriment of economics, we're in a real bad spot. That's something that I emphasize that point a lot. And people look to cities like Seattle and say, oh, that's a wealthy society. And I think what you're suggesting is that for the folks who are earning the wealth, they're coming from out of the state. And the people who generationally grew up in the area, they don't have the means to partake in that wealth because the system is so politicized that it inculcates a dependency on politics to find, your next check or your next bump up in life, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. You kind of explained it in a very, eloquent way. I think, it's we, here, I think those that, particularly minorities, and this is not to pinpoint anyone, or say that it's anyone's fault or anything like that, but I think those of us who are, minority groups here, we have this idea that, the government should be doing more to help, or putting in more money to help, right? And the thing is that the state, for the majority, it is that is the way it is, right? Like the state does put in a lot of money to social welfare, right? But as soon as you try to climb out of that hole, there's all these barriers that are put before you, which is, okay, well, if you receive food stamps or you receive housing, you can't make more than a certain amount. Otherwise, we're going to kick you out, right? Or you need to start paying up, that amount, right? So, you're trying to become independent, but every step you take is, okay, well then, that's another mark on you. So now you need to come up with a way to fund, your life. If you want to be healthy, you need to be able to, have the money to do that. We're not gonna help you figure out, a healthy plan. Of course they say that, through commercials and everything else, telling people what to buy and all of that. But, it's like, it's another thing when you actually have to figure that out, and, fresh produce or, organic foods is costing you, half your paycheck. You know what I mean? And so there's all these ramifications. I think people, they don't see that when they think, okay, well, yeah, the government is going to help me out, or the government is going to do this and that. But I don't think they understand the ramifications of that. What's going to happen in the end is you're basically never going to be able to get out of poverty, because there's going to be a constant demand on you.
Right,
and
right.
So, the only way to get out of it is to basically, say, I'm going to leave, or, gain some kind of skills, which by the time, again, and I say this, I can only speak for my generation. I know that, in my generation, by the time people figure that out, right, like the school and stuff like that, they tell you, oh, well, you can go to college, you can go to community college, you can gain skills. But it's like, by that time, man, people have families. They're grown. They don't have time to sit in class, for periods and stuff like this. It's not middle school. It's not elementary. You know what I mean? It's not like people are 18 and 19 anymore. They're in their 30s, and they can't, have a schedule, with 3 periods out of the day, and eat lunch and, do homework, and then have to take care of kids at the same time and all of that. And then the government, here says, well, we'll help you do that. We'll help you do this. And, it's a mess.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, it's interesting how I think it was over 50% of young people are now living at home with their parents. So that's the highest since the Great Depression. Let's hold this thought. When we continue live on A Neighbor's Choice, we're going to get into what happens when we turn to scapegoat stories. When we can't get wealth, if we can't grow the pie, if we feel like our lot in life is stagnating, the next thing is human beings turn to scapegoats. They turn to scapegoats to find meaning, to find some kind of satisfaction with their lot in life, that they can get some kind of revenge against those who have oppressed them. And so we are always telling these stories in the media cycles we see today about, I am the scapegoat, or I am on the side of the scapegoat. No, you are the scapegoat, or I am the scapegoat. I am the ally of the scapegoat. And this is the narrative that we see dominate all politics, all movies, all literature, everything that is captivating our minds and plaguing our hearts. It's in this story that we're about to explore in just a moment on A Neighbor's Choice. We'll be back in a second. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Not ready to go to your favorite seafood restaurant? Get the highest quality fish for less delivered straight to your door by Fast Fresh Seafood. Order our fresh hog snapper, grouper, mahi, and more. They're boneless, skinless, flash frozen the same day, and individually vacuum wrapped. Pick the size filet you want, the amount you want, and checkout's easy at fastfreshseafood.com. The best thing, every fish is on sale. Fastfreshseafood.com. Caught fresh for you, delivered straight to you. Stay home and stay safe.
Our monetary system is failing. Negative interest rates, growing debt, highly speculative market, and the dollar is being devalued by the Fed. Investing your wealth has never been more challenging. Who wants to earn just 1% interest annually in a savings account? There is another option, monetary metals. They pay interest on gold in gold, with no storage costs ever. Visit interestongold.com/David. That's interestongold.com/David. Hello, David Gornosky here. You're listening to A Neighbor's Choice. Set the dial here if you're listening in the car or listening on radio to this station. This is where you want to go to learn the exclusive information we provide with folks that are challenging the status quo in the field of arts and science, physics, all kinds of different areas that we need to grow if we're going to grow ourselves out of this mess that we're in politically. I'm here with a friend of mine, Shannon Braswell. You can find him on many of our Things Hidden episodes. Just search for Things Hidden online, Things Hidden podcast, or search for Things Hidden on aneighborschoice.com and watch some of the episodes of our discussions. And Shannon takes things from an anthropological and historical perspective, which I think is very, very important to use in this time where there's so much confusion. Shannon, I wanted to set the table here because, you know, you and I both like the work of Rene Girard, and he talks a lot about scapegoats and how Christianity makes us extremely aware of the scapegoats that are all around us. And we're especially aware of the scapegoats that seem to help us in relationship to beating our rivals, right? And two types of scapegoat stories I hear in the politics of 2020 look like this. On the left, you have a coalition of scapegoat groups. You have, people of color, you have feminists, you have the disability community, all these different groups, LGBT community, and each one of these are like a collective of scapegoats, and they are trying to express through various means that they have been unjustly persecuted by society, and that makes them a victim, and that makes them a scapegoat, and therefore they have righteous anger and righteous vengeance in their hands that they are willing and justified in using. And then on the right, you have this scapegoat story that's Trump versus, it's the one versus the many. It's Trump versus the one-party machine in Washington. You know, the Republican establishment doesn't like him. The Democrat establishment doesn't like him. The Pentagon doesn't like him. The foreign heads of state don't like him. It's everybody in the establishment world against this rogue outsider. and it's the one versus the many. So the one guy who comes in and disrupts the way you're supposed to talk, the way you're supposed to act, it's the one versus the many. So the crowd of DC's trying to get the media and everybody to expel this Trump guy as a heretic. But then you have this other story on the left of, no, we're the scapegoats. Each one of our identity groups are the scapegoat. Which scapegoat story do you think is going to have more power in the long run?
I mean, that's, it's hard to, it's hard to say, with that, because I think it's, it's not so much about which side is going to come out in the end. It's like, I think it has to do with more with, are we going to recognize that we're scapegoating each other, or we're scapegoating a person or a group, or not. And so I think that's the kind of the question that I think our generation should be asking. We talked a little bit about, how many people we think might recognize the work of Rene Girard, or may have read, Rene Girard, and we both came up with a approximately low thousands or something like that, a small number, right? And I said that it's probably particularly people that either follow other people that we know who are venture capitalists or entrepreneurs, so they've kind of crept in through other people's work, or they've gotten so tired of the humanities and social sciences being repetitive that they stumbled on Rene Girard. So he became the Scandalon of the humanities department or whatever, but the point, I think, is if we're going to move past using others as a reason for our failures in life, and that's not to say that other people cannot be barriers or create problems for us. That is a fact. Other people do create stumbling blocks, right? But I think the more we're aware of the fact that people can do that, and the more we can be aware of how to avoid that, right? And how to avoid turning accusations into something manifested, revolution, or rioting, or forcing people to basically make a choice, pick a side. You've got to if you don't, whether it's saying nothing is opting for siding with the oppressors, right? That's the kind of stuff we need to recognize and try to walk away from.
Yeah, we need to walk away from it fast, because our society is going to devolve into chaotic violence very quickly if we don't start walking away from that behavior pattern. Shannon, always a pleasure to talk to you. We'll continue to follow you and keep up with your ideas on our Things Hidden podcast and other places. Maybe you'll have some other programs coming soon. So thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me on, man.
In a moment, we're going to turn to the world of economics with Keith Weiner of Monetary Metals to understand GDP, the broken window fallacy, and inflation.
You know what time of year it is.
Hurricane conditions in the next 36 hours.
You know what hurricanes can do.
Devastating damage expected.
Well, we want you to know, no matter how bad things get,
Power outages. This is life-threatening.
you can stay up to date with the latest information here. Your home for news, talk, and information. And remember, we'll keep an eye on the tropics. You keep an ear on us.
Got batteries in the flashlight.
The all-new News Talk 1040 WHBO.
Yeah, we got our radio.
President Trump isn't denying that he tried to publicly play down the seriousness of COVID-19 earlier this year, but he says he did so with the public's best interests in mind.
You cannot show a sense of panic, or you're going to have bigger problems than you ever had before.
The president responding to reporting in journalist Bob Woodward's new book about him. Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden isn't buying the president's explanation.
He lied to the American people. He knowingly and willingly lied about the threat it posed to the country for months.
Biden on a campaign stop in Warren, Michigan. The former chief of intelligence at the Department of Homeland Security has filed a whistleblower complaint. ABC News has obtained a copy of Brian Murphy's complaint, which says the White House sought on numerous times to censor or manipulate intelligence for political purposes. The sky over California and Oregon is orange as smoke from wildfires blocks out the sun. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. I'm David Gronowski here, live across FM and AM on the Sunshine State. Happy to have this time with you. You can email me, hello@aneighborschoice.com. And now we're going to get an update from the economic perspective of Keith Weiner, who's the president of the Monetary Metals Organization. How you doing, Keith?
I'm doing good. How about you, David?
I'm doing well, and there's a lot of stories in the news about economics, and I want to try to get to some of them as much as we can here. We have this story that I wanted to get your take on thestreet.com. It says the Fed now owns nearly 1/3 of all U.S. mortgages. And this is the Fed's balance sheet. Nearly $7 trillion in securities, $2 trillion in mortgages. As of August 26, 2020, the Fed's balance sheet is nearly $7 trillion total, of which $3.7 trillion are notes or bonds, nearly $2 trillion in mortgages, which is Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or Ginnie Mae. What's your take on this, Keith?
Well, first of all, number one, madness. I mean, I don't even know how you begin to describe essentially what is the socialization, the nationalization of the real estate in this country, because the people are defaulting or going to default because of the economic harms they've suffered so far into this COVID lockdown. Then, the bank repossesses, and if the bank is the government, then the government effectively becomes the owner. But I think what this shows is that obviously there's a huge problem with people not paying their mortgages. We don't know how big that problem is. Nobody wants to talk about it. And that would destroy the banks. So the banks, have a relatively thin capital margin, and if they're taking huge losses on their mortgage portfolios, then they would be insolvent. So the Fed was given authorization to buy and own unlimited amounts of mortgages. This was a couple of months ago, and what we're seeing here is the consequences of that. The banks must be offloading the non-performing mortgages at prodigious rates. So spigots have been opened, and instead of taking this problematic asset off the bank's hands, and so what did you say, up to $2 trillion as of the end of August? Wouldn't surprise me if it was a lot more than that now. obviously here we are on September 9th.
Wow. So, do you think that there's a housing bubble pop that's going to happen similar to 2008 on the horizon, or is there going to be, how do you see this playing out?
That is a little harder to say. So the one thing that's an observable fact in the real estate market right now is that there's very little inventory. Normally if something is going to crash, you would expect inventory to be piling up. And my gut feeling has been telling me that the reason why there's no inventory is because there's no selling, because nobody's under any pressure to sell. If you can't afford it, you just stop paying. And then the bank isn't going to foreclose. The bank is just absorbing that and then offloading the mortgage to the Fed, where it becomes a Fed's problem. And so in terms of, in the short term, right, if nobody is forced to get out of the house they can't afford, then, maybe there's no selling pressure. And at the same time that the interest rates are even lower, thanks to the Fed's 40-year war on interest, which is all but won. That is, it's almost all but defeated interest. And thanks to the government guarantees of essentially all residential mortgages at this point, the cost of borrowing in order to buy a house is lower than it ever was. And of course, most people are monthly payment buyers. So if you lower the interest rate, you lower the monthly payment, which means they can afford more house, or at least a more expensive house, same house being more expensive. So maybe not. But there's a problem with this in the longer term, and that is, as you look at countries in Latin America, you see these favelas or ghettos or whatever you call them, that if people are living in these structures, but they don't necessarily have any legal right to the structure, and any lender wouldn't have any legal recourse. Mm-hmm. And so what happens is, of course, everything becomes very shabby. Everything is, on the verge of falling down. Nothing can be maintained because the person who's living in it is effectively a squatter. So what happens if they say, okay, Mr. Joe Smith, you're not paying your mortgage anymore, and we're not going to foreclose on you. But Joe Smith doesn't have a rightful title anymore. So what is he going to do in terms of maintenance, repairs, et cetera? And so if the roof leaks, maybe he's just going to go up to the attic and hang a bucket from one of the rafters to catch the drips. Mm-hmm. And if the air conditioning breaks in a hot climate like Florida or Arizona, maybe he'll do something with duct tape and chewing gum to sort of get it working. But what's going to happen is there's going to be a degradation of the housing stock. We're going to create a nation of like Addams Family, type shabby, decay. That doesn't happen immediately. That obviously takes years or decades to play out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another story that I think kind of goes in the same direction of madness is on thehill.com. It says U.S. budget deficit hits record $3 trillion. The federal budget deficit hit an unprecedented $3 trillion in August, with another month to go before the end of the fiscal year, according to estimates from the Congressional Budget Office. That figure amounts to $1.9 trillion more than the same period last year, and more than double the largest year-long deficit on record.
Yeah, imagine. The only thing I would add to that is they have some accounting gimmick, and I have not, every once in a while, I spend 15 to 20 minutes trying to research it. I haven't yet figured out what the gimmick is. The actual increase in the government's debt. There's a website run by the U.S. Treasury Department called Debt to the Penny, and anybody can Google that and go there. So if you put in, and so when they passed the CARES Act, that was like March 29 or something when it passed. So I said, okay, let's take a look at the 12 months ending March 31, right before the spending spigot would have been turned on. The debt increased by 1.7 trillion. And of course, they would be reporting that as a deficit of, more like $1 trillion or less than, somewhere around there. So they underreport the amount that they dig the hole deeper every year. That somehow that's underreported. And I don't exactly know what the gimmick is, but there's some way that they do that. And so to that 1.7 trillion, they've added $2.3 trillion CARES Act, and then I don't know if it has a name, but I think of it as the CARES Act supplement, 0.5 trillion. So a total of 2.8 plus the 1.7, and you're at 4.5 trillion. And I figure that tax revenues will be down $1 trillion this year because a lot of people aren't making any money. So you got a $5.5 trillion deficit, assuming they don't, pass another stimulus or another bailout or whatever you want to call it. You got, $5.5 trillion shortfall. And so now you said that they're claiming it's going to be $3 trillion plus another month to go. The government's fiscal year ends September 30. So assuming that other month is another trillion or so, then they're admitting to $4 trillion out of 5.5. This is completely off the charts bonkers. This is on the belief that you can live on your credit card forever, and there's nothing wrong, nothing to see here, folks. Just move along.
Right.
And of course, there are going to be terrible consequences to this, but not immediately. So we think we can get away with it.
One of the things I don't really want you to see is something we see on Yahoo.com. J.P. Morgan Chase is probing fraud in the U.S. stimulus programs, the PPP. So you've got this situation where they're investigating unethical conduct by customers and employees connected to the huge government pandemic relief programs. The article goes on to say that U.S. prosecutors last month unveiled criminal charges against one PPP recipient who spent nearly $3 million on a Rolex watch and other luxury items after claiming as employees, celebrities, and professional athletes. Another one, a Texas man spent $200,000 on PPP funds on a Lamborghini. So this is the kind of bread and circuses insanity I think we can continue to expect when the government is creating all this money out of thin air. It's going to continually breed this kind of insane corruption. Do you see that?
I was going to say, I just have two responses to that. One, I'm shocked, David, that the government is giving away $1 trillion and that there's corruption involved in the giant loot giveaway. And the second comment, I just want to ironically observe, the guy who bought the watch got a worse deal than the guy who bought the Ferrari. $200,000 Ferrari sounds like a decent deal. $3 million for a watch sounds like he got ripped off. But you just got to find humor in this stuff,
Maybe it was a very heavy gold watch with lots of gold, huh? So Keith, there's this concept called the broken window fallacy. What does that mean? What's a lesson that we can learn? This broken window fallacy. I think it's kind of tied into this PPP stuff.
Yeah. So, 200 years ago, roughly, a guy named Frederick Bastiat was writing some very great little pearls of wisdom. And back in his day, there was this fallacy. I would say back in his day, of course, that fallacy continues to regurgitate even today. But the fallacy was, if you break a window, then you're going to add to the economy because, let's say it's a teller and you break his window and now he has to go hire the glazier, and the glazier gets business he otherwise wouldn't have had. And Bastiat debunks this and says, well, sure, but now that means the teller is something else he can't spend the money on. And, maybe it was a new tool he wants to buy that he can't afford to buy. And so, it's zero sum, and if you break something, obviously that's not going to add anything. Of course, in Bastiat's day, you didn't have the entire economy living on credit the way we do today. And so today, I would say, if you break a window, it does add to GDP. The teller is going to borrow the money to repair the window and continue to spend, in most cases, continue to spend as he had. And the entire economy works that way. So when you shut down the economy and you say, okay, some of these businesses failed, obviously, many of them succeeded, and you see the conservatives who are defending, President Trump's, economic performance will say, well, look, those companies survived just fine. They're going to go on and keep doing what they did. Once we recover, there's going to be a V-shaped recovery. Well, these businesses took on debt. And so I think the point that needs to be underscored is, yes, if you break a window that adds to GDP, if you borrow and put it on the tab in order to spend to consume that adds to GDP, that is not a recommendation for breaking windows, and it's not a recommendation to borrow and just put it on the tab. It's a damning indictment of GDP as a measure of the economy. That we're using this Keynesian, this socialist measure that's designed for propaganda purposes, and we're saying, see, breaking windows is just fine. See, locking the economy down for months, it's just fine. Look, GDP is gonna rebound faster than ever. Thanks to what? Thanks to the government adding to an already stupefying number, 1.7 trillion. Is madness. And adding to that another 2.8 trillion in spending, sure, it boosts up GDP. And what does that prove? Does that prove the economy is fine, or does that prove that GDP is a wrongful measure? It's not telling you what you think it's telling you.
So basically, America is in this illusion of wealth where we're all saying, hey, you know, I've got a great job. And they say, what do you do? It's like, I repair broken windows that were broken down by the riots last night. That's what we're all doing. We're building we're repairing broken windows.
Yeah, there's a great illusion of it. And economists have a term for one variant of this, and that is when the Fed pushes down interest rates and pushes up asset prices, so people who own assets feel richer and they spend more. And this is a pretty well understood phenomenon in economics. They call it the wealth effect. And I say, you know what? The wealth effect is not wealth in the way that pasteurized, homogenized, processed American cheese food in a spray can is not cheese.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's a cheap facsimile thereof. So people are basically consuming their capital. They feel richer. They're actually getting poorer, but they don't notice it during the boom. Now, essentially, all the trade, and this is why the stock market is going up right now. The trade is the belief that the Fed is going to reflate the bubble and continue, for another X months or years, the same straight line up that it's been since Obama took office in 2009. That's the bet. Will it happen? Well, maybe.
How come so many of the billionaires in our society, like Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos and Mark Zuckerberg, how come they don't talk about the economy the way you're describing it?
Well, I think there's a couple. I mean, my view of the economy is certainly outside the mainstream, and so if you point to any random person in the public, they wouldn't necessarily hold these views. Secondly, it was actually I think it was Upton Sinclair who said it's impossible to teach something to somebody whose salary depends on him not knowing it. Now that's probably a little bit less Bill Gates, who's obviously out of the game and out of the saddle. More so, people like Bezos that are still doing what they're doing. It's hard to say, and there's all these arguments now. Let's just take Bezos, for example, where the left is condemning him. In fact, they're setting up some sort of so-called protest outside his house, where they're setting up a guillotine. And, which is a naked threat that they're going to murder him. And I don't think that should be tolerated. That's not freedom of speech. That's intimidation and mob. It's like burning a cross on somebody's lawn. I mean, there's certain things that should just be illegal. But aside from that, what are they saying? They're saying he's a bad guy and he hasn't created any wealth. He's a parasite. That's all the standard leftist tropes. Okay, fine. And so the right, of course, will defend him and say, look, he created so much value that he's now worth, $200 billion or something. And I say, wait a minute, guys. There's two different things going on here at the same time. One is he created a lot of wealth. Amazon adds a lot of value to the world today, and he created that, sure. But the Fed keeps pushing down interest rates, which keeps pushing up asset prices. There's no question that a great part of the paper, the numerical dollar value that you assign to Jeff Bezos' health, there's no question that a big part of that has been going up and up and up thanks to the Fed's wealth effect, and not because Amazon is becoming that much more valuable, but because the Fed has pushed down the interest rate and that's caused stock prices to rise. And so there's those two things. And to the extent that the left is complaining about the Fed, which is basically they're not, but if that was the complaint, you'd have to say that's a rightful complaint. And so anyways, to your question, the billionaires don't necessarily see that and don't necessarily want to see that because they want to tell themselves, look, this is all me. And, if you're in a rising tide environment where interest rates keep falling, then, for people that are in that position, that's, it's a lot of fun and that can make a very big dollar figure, for their net worth.
Keith Weiner, it's always a pleasure to hear from you. Visit interestongold.com/David to learn more about what Keith is proposing could be a radical new solution to getting out of this failing Keynesian economy that we have. Interestongold.com/David. Thanks again for joining me, Keith.
Thank you.
We'll be back in just a moment on A Neighbor's Choice. David Gronowski here. Let me tell you about a man named Gabriel. Every day, Gabriel puts on his boots and drives across America to make sure our store shelves stay stocked with the food people count on. See, Gabriel served our country overseas. He knows that America stands for freedom, quality, and caring for others the way we would like to be treated. That's why when Gabriel saw food shelves getting low during the pandemic, he hit the road as a driver with Oakley Transport. In the land of the free, where no one should go hungry, we need heroes like Gabriel to help keep America fed. CDLA driving professionals. Join Oakley Transport today. Keep America fed. Visit oakleytransport.com or call them today at 1-877-8-TANKER. That's 1-877-8-TANKER.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It's a stressful process. There are attorneys in Tampa Bay that keep clients well informed, creating less stress. That law firm is Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims don't realize they have a claim for the loss until they talk to Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to Catania.com. Over 28 years in practice. Catania, personal injury, auto, and motorcycle accident attorneys. Catania, putting families first.
Office Tampa. Not attorney spokeswoman.
Our monetary system is failing. Negative interest rates, growing debt, highly speculative market, and the dollar is being devalued by the Fed. Investing your wealth has never been more challenging. Who wants to earn just 1% interest annually in a savings account? There is another option. Monetary metals. They pay interest on gold in gold with no storage costs ever. Visit interestongold.com/David. That's interestongold.com/David.
Baseball is back, and as always, the name of the game in baseball is to go home and be safe. Well, nobody protects all the pieces of your life like Italiano Insurance. Whether it's your home, car, life, disability, long-term care, Italiano keeps you safe. We can never predict what's going to happen in a baseball game, and we can never predict what's going to happen in life. So call the trusted agents at Italiano and make sure you're covered. Welcome back, Rays and baseball. Call Italiano at 813-877-7799 or go to ItalianoInsurance.com.
Public service announcement. When you see a "hate has no home here" yard sign, it's a good bet that there is a very intolerant, coercion-loving person inside. Just a little heads up there. You'll typically find that in our world, up is down and down is up. And if you say you're tolerant, that means you don't want to hear anything but what billionaire corporatists have funded in rich six-figure communist professors' classrooms. It's very simple. That's the only kind of tolerance that you allow for, is that limited, bigoted set of ideas. We have a news from Jennifer Jacobs online, says White House will announce further troop reductions from Iraq and further Afghanistan troop reductions coming in a few days. So that's what the "hate has no home here" people hate. For some reason, they think that it's love to continually occupy Syria and Afghanistan. That's their view of love? That is a sick, demented view of love. Who do these people think they are to lecture us about what hate is when they hate the idea of leaving people alone who've done nothing wrong to them? That is the most demented idea you could ever have. Say, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden so he will keep troops continually in Afghanistan, keep troops escalating in Syria, keep troops in Iraq, keep spending more and more money on drones and occupation of people of color overseas like Biden and Harris. Kamala Harris calls herself a Truman Democrat. Nuclear bomb-loving Truman Democrat. Nuclear bomb-loving Truman Democrat. Can you believe that? This is not a place of love. This is a place that's full of hate that these people are coming from. Anybody who would want to be in the endless wars for another 4 years that is filled with venom and hate that I can't even imagine how you can live with yourself to want to vote for the perpetuation of these wars. Disgusting, disgusting. Another blunder. We have State Representative Anthony Sabatini posted that people are waking up to Biden's lockdown, protest. His insistence on a mandated federal mask mandate. Fox News has the story that Biden is walking back his national mask mandate over constitutional issue. So he's realizing that his polls are tanking because people are realizing that you can't have a centrally planned economy. You cannot force people to stop working for years. The only reason why this has any political currency at all is because so much of the public has been deliberately dumbed down by our government school system. That's the bottom line. If you dumb down people, they become compliant, useful fools for the perpetuation of grifters and corrupt corporatists in Wall Street. That's the bottom line. Right now, small businesses are being destroyed by these mob-type people like Governor Cuomo and all these different busybody folks. Now, it's not just Democrats, but they have led the way on trying to pillage the economy for a select few corporations while small businesses are forced out of business. This is a rigged shakedown game. That's what I see here. It's a real virus that then becomes exploited by a bunch of nihilists that love to put up bumper stickers saying love is only here. There is no hate here, while they pillage people and send people with COVID into nursing homes. Disgusting. This is repulsive, these people acting this way. And they're not going to be given a pass on this stuff. This is barbaric. It's brutish. You don't send COVID-infected people into nursing homes, and you don't live in a world where you have a federal government tell you you have to wear a mask. The idea of wearing masks in perpetuity is a detriment to our immune system. Our immune system is meant to deal with a viral load on a daily basis in order to maintain its energy, to maintain its strength. And if you're keeping yourself completely sanitized and away from people, you are following a stupid anti-science approach to your life health. Now, if you are someone who is immunocompromised already, then yes, stay away. But for the millions of young people who have been bought into the idea that they have to stay away from people forever, that is a stupid anti-science approach to a young, healthy person. You cannot stay hidden from society for years and not have severe health consequences and also severe psychological consequences and severe economic consequences. So these liars continue to be exposed, and hey, they'd be exposed a lot faster. The sooner we get our family members out of government schools, stop selling out your kids' future to garbage government ideas. They fail over and over and over again, but the future is bright as long as we grab for freedom, our liberty. Our liberty should be something that we hold fast to. We don't let go of at the drop of a hat. We don't let go of because everybody else is doing it. We stand for liberty. We stand for the one. Even when the 99 is going one way, we defend the one who has gone astray. And that one is where we'll find Teslas in the future. Not the car, the man, Nikola Tesla. That's where we'll find our next Nikola Tesla. It's that one that's off to the side that the stupefied groupthink wants to marginalize and discredit as a kook or a quack because they can't handle things that are outside of their narrow, low-resolution perspective on life, that it's all based on coercion, telling people what to do, and mandating to have their way over other people. We don't want that stinky, stupid tyranny anymore. We want our freedom. We want the fresh air of our liberty back, and we're going to get it back because we are part of the new media conversation. I'm David Gronowski. Email me hello@aneighborschoice.com. hello@aneighborschoice.com. Godspeed.